Welcome to episode 9 of the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ream, and guess what? It's another excellent guest today. We have the Smart Travelista with us today. I hope you are enjoying what we're doing. Please rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you are listening. I appreciate you being here, and I think it's time that we jump right in with Linda, the Smart Travelista, with episode 9 of the Where Have You Been podcast. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy this conversation. I think it's another great one. All right, we have another incredible guest on the Where Have You Been podcast. I say it every time, but it's true. And this time we have another author. We seem to be trending in that direction lately for one reason or another. But this person is so accomplished in their writing, and I don't know if I know that they can count the number of books that they've written, but I'll let them tell you themselves. This week we have Linda on the podcast. Linda, would you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you?
Sure, yeah, thanks for the great welcome, Bill. I'm Linda King. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I'm a travel writer, author, and travel blogger, and also the founder of the Smart Travelista. And I have 11 books, just on 11 books on Amazon.
And do you have more in the works?
Absolutely, yeah. Just finished the first draft on my 12th one and thinking about the 13th. So hopefully by the end of the year I'll have 13 books. So yeah, it's a bit of a production happening at the moment.
So you're always busy, in other words. And would you tell our listeners more specifically what the books are about?
Sure, yes. I've got 2 book series. One is called the Smart Travelista Guides. So these books are on specific travel topics that most travellers would want to know about or find out a bit more about. So first book is Finding the Best Travel Bargains and Managing Your Budget. Second book, The Best Overseas Bargain Shopping. And third book, which has just had an update actually, is How to Increase Your Airline Loyalty Points and Fly for Free. So that's all about building your airline miles and getting that free trip. Book 4, Protect Your Travel Health and Safety. 5 is How to Travel with Food Allergies. We've also got Mastering Solo Travel, using ChatGPT with your travel planning. The last book in the Smart Travelista series so far is Mastering Mindful Travel, which is the most recent. And then my second series is Annex from Abroad. So when we travel, sometimes things don't go right. Sometimes they go really wrong. So that's what Antics from Abroad is about. So there's 3 books in that series, and it's just about situations I've found myself while traveling, and also people that I've met, other travelers, where they've told me their crazy and dramatic stories. So that's the book series, 2 book series in a nutshell. But yeah, if you're interested in any of those topics, I highly recommend you go and pay a visit to Amazon and check them out.
That's fantastic. And I'll put the links in the show notes, of course. And can our listeners find you on socials anywhere?
Yeah, I'm on a lot of socials. So Instagram, X, LinkedIn, YouTube, Threads, Blue Sky, Facebook. They can come to my website as well, thesmarttravelista.com. But yeah, I'm usually on most of the social medias. And yeah, I always love a chat with people. And my favourite thing of all is when people ask travel questions, because that is really interesting for me. Helping people out with their answers, but also it sometimes generates great ideas about something that I may not have thought about. So I find that really educational and engaging.
Yeah, you're the right person to ask. You've sort of made it your life's work. Can I ask how that all came to be? When did you decide that you were going to do this, writing these books and sort of sharing your experiences and tips with the world?
Yeah, it came together, Bill, organically. I've found, having been a travel agent at an airline, I have all this expertise and it's sort of innate because I used to do this for other clients, and obviously I do that for myself as well. And I just thought, oh, well, everyone must know all these tips, because I knew them and I just thought everyone else did. I started having conversations as you do when you travel with other travelers, and I found out just through market research that people did not know these things. Like for me, it was like, oh, everyone knows this, it's common sense. A lot of people didn't know the tips. And I thought to myself, well, that sounds like an opportunity to maybe formulate and make something of this, because I have the expertise in the money management and obviously the expertise in travel. So I thought it's a really nice combination. And I mean, who doesn't want to travel more? I mean, that's the goal for me with the Smart Travelista, traveling well, but not for the large cost, because if you're not paying the large cost, then that means there's money left over where you can do more travel. And that's my life, I've got a full-time job, but whenever I can, I travel, and I want to share that with everyone because I think it's just the most wonderful thing in the world to be able to travel and go to other places in the world, meet different people from different cultures, seeing different things. I just think it's a wonderful life and a wonderful education. So, yeah, so I formulated that after some conversations with some other travellers. And one lady said to me, "Do you have a website? Do you have a blog?" And all these other things. And I thought to myself, at that point in time, I didn't. And she said to me, "I would follow you if you had, these things, because some of the advice you're giving me is really fantastic." So that's really how it came about.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think it's traveling as an act. I think it's really rewarding and you can watch travel shows and you can watch these episodes where, even Anthony Bourdain when he was doing it or whomever, and they visit these other places and you get to see these other cultures, but without actually going somewhere and experiencing it firsthand, it's
Mm.
just not the same. And it really, it's a cliche term to broaden your horizons, but it
Mm.
really opens your mind to realize that there's so much more out there. We live in a bubble, I think, a lot of times in our day-to-day lives, and just getting out there and experiencing it firsthand, it can be life-changing. And I think for you, I feel like it was. For me, it definitely was, to go to these other
Mm.
places and see how other people live their lives, and realizing that there is no right or wrong. It's just my life is different in the United States than in other countries, and
Mm.
it's wonderful. Travel is maybe one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, I would agree, Bill. Like it's just, I think once it gets in your blood, that's it. You're never going to stop. And yeah, it is life changing, educational. I think it makes you a better global citizen as well. I think because you're open to a lot more things that you may not have been if you didn't travel. But yeah, it's recommend it to anyone, and we're really lucky now, that we've got low cost carriers which actually have brought down the cost in travel. I think over the years, there is a travel budget for everyone, whether you want totally luxury trip or you want something that's a
Hmm.
bit more budget, and we've got everything in between. So I think it's really good, it's just you've got to want to do it, and make it a
Hmm.
priority, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree. And, yeah, for me, it depends where I'm going, how long the trip is going to be. And, the budget airlines are no frills, and you get what you get. You get a seat and you may be cramped. But if your most important objective is to get somewhere and be able to experience it, for me, it's worth it, even if I'm a little uncomfortable for a few hours on a flight.
Mm.
But and I definitely want to get to the travel stories as soon as possible. However, there was one thing you brought up that was interesting to me. You have one of your books is about using Chat GPT with travel. And I don't want you to, you know, give all the details to what the book entails, but I'm intrigued by that because I had a guest, the episode hasn't aired yet, it'll be out in a while, but he actually mentioned that he uses Chat GPT. Oh, I'm sorry, actually it was an episode that already did air. I apologize. I'll edit this part. But I had a guest who told me that he has used Chat GPT to create itineraries for himself and just saying, this is where I want to go, these are the places I want to see. Is that kind of what you were talking about in that book? Kind of creating your own
Yeah,
travel guide?
yeah. So it can be at any point in the travel. So in the book, I've actually got 108 Chat GPT prompts with people get in the book, which is really good as well, broken up into different categories. But I think with Chat GPT, and I use it daily, it's just fabulous. It's from the very beginning. So you might want to travel, but you're not actually sure where you want to go. It's really good for inspiration. So you just feed into it. I want to go on a beach holiday in this area of the world. Can you suggest some destinations? So could it even be from even the inspiration on where to go if you didn't know where to go, all the way through to um, an itinerary, a 5 day itinerary plotted out for you. Yeah, the book goes through all those sorts of things. It also talks about, I mean, not everyone's got an account with ChatGPT. How do you start? How do you get started with it? And then it goes into more detailed, you know, for travel inspiration and obviously other topics. It's a very, very good tool. It acts like, as we know, it's like a virtual assistant. Well, it acts like a virtual travel agent. You can ask it questions and it will come back with answers. And that's what you'd be doing if you were face to face with a travel agent. So I find that you could use it like that as well.
Yeah.
You could ask it, have you been to South America? What do you suggest are the best places to go to? You know, you, the thing with ChatGPT, there's so many recommendations and suggestions and information that it can give you. It's just about how you formulate and put the most specific prompt. Because if you ask general, you'll get general answers
You'll
back.
get
But
general.
if you
Yeah.
get more specific with the actual prompt, and most people, I suppose, know what prompts are, but prompts are just the instructions you feed into it, the better off and the better information you will get back. So the book talks all about that. And the title is Turn Travel Plans into Memories with ChatGPT. So that's what we want. We want our travel plans to then become memories. We've gone on the trip and then we come
Yes.
back and we remember it. So, yeah. But if anyone's interested,
Yes.
there's more information in the book.
Yeah, it even gets down to the nitty gritty, as far as I understand, where you can put in and say, I would like an itinerary to see this place, this place, this place when I get to wherever. And not only
Yes.
will it give you a plan for maybe, you say, I'll be there 4 days, and it will tell you
Mm,
that, but it will also give you, here's the options for rail travel, and here's the pricing. And it will actually
mm.
tell you what stop to go to, when to be there. I mean, that's incredible. And it's something that I just never put two and two together. I've never really used GPT until recently. And when I heard that, I just thought, man, like a light bulb went off. Like, holy cow, that could make so many things so much easier. So,
Yes.
and it's fun to discover on your own, but that's awesome. So, but I do want to, and before I get into the where have you been section, I'd like to know, I know you said you worked in a travel agency for some time, but when did travel actually become like a must in your life when you were growing up, or when did that happen for you and how?
As a child, so I was really lucky. My parents loved to travel. So we were always traveling. So when we were really young, it was more around Australia, sort of, close by. And when we got a little bit older, my parents took me and my brother, because I had older siblings and they were off doing their own thing. We went round Australia for 4 months. My father got some long service leave from his job and we went road tripping around Australia. So that was pivotal in my life. The things that we saw, it was the first time in my life I'd seen an Indigenous person in the middle of the Northern Territory. We went across the Nullarbor Plains, which is a strip of road across from Perth all the way through to Adelaide, and it's quite long, red earth everywhere. And then across there, as you're going across the Nullarbor Plains, there is the Great Australian Bight. So when you look at the map of Australia, there looks like there's a bight taken out of it underneath. That is the Great Australian Bight. That's what they call it. But, there was some mind-blowing things that I saw. There was only like a few things that I saw. But, yeah, we saw so many things that really that and really resonated with me. And then I was like, once I leave school, I've got to get into travel. That was the goal, because I knew how wonderful that trip was and how pivotal it was. The goal or the dream was always to get into the travel industry, and I made it happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's been a
regional travel
lifelong.
actually started it.
Sorry, Bill.
So regional travel really started it for you.
Yes, regional. So, interstate. When we were younger, like I live in Melbourne now, but when I was younger, we lived in Sydney, and it was about, the regional travel. So we would go to the Snowy Mountains, Mount Kosciuszko, or then we would go to, the Jenolan Caves, which was within New South Wales. And then, yeah, and further afield, we would go to Melbourne, some school holidays, and then it just grew. And then once we'd done a few little regional trips, then it became, let's go right around Australia, and that's what we did.
And then, so when did you first leave the country?
I first left the country, would have been, I think I was 18 when I first left Australia, and that was like a really quick trip across the Tasman to New Zealand. But then after that little trip, I then went by myself over to Europe. So if we're talking sort of long haul, the first long haul trip was I flew to London, I went on a tour of Europe for about a month. and then did a bit of my own stuff as well. So that was probably I don't know, that definitely was a pivotal moment, because I actually went on that trip before I was even in the airlines. And then it was like, okay, we've definitely got to get into the airlines now. I'd seen what Europe had to and London had to show for itself. And I was like, yeah, this dream has to become a reality right now.
And credit to you. Many people have those dreams and they don't follow through with them, but you made it happen. So I'm looking at this list that you've sent me of the
Yeah.
places that you've been, and it's immense. And there is no way we will get to even probably a third of the places that you've been.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to be added to my list of recurring guests. We may have you back sometime down the road if you're open to it. But
Yeah.
let's jump in. I'm excited to hear from you. And as I tell every guest, you can list some places if you'd like, or be more general, or you can just start with one of your favorite stories from any place that just really impacted you. So, Miss Linda King, where have you been?
Where have I been? I'll run off the list real quick, and then we can talk about travel stories. But obviously Australia,
Sounds
I've seen
great.
everything there. I've been Austria, Canada, China, Cook Islands, Czech Republic, Fiji, France, French Polynesia, Germany, Hong Kong, Hungary, Indonesia, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Liechtenstein, Malaysia, Mexico, Monaco, Singapore, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Thailand, the United Arab Emirates, UK, USA, Vatican City, and Vietnam.
It's
It'll actually be
insane.
another.
It's so wonderful. It's so
Yeah.
wonderful.
Another one will be added to the list actually next weekend, which will be Vanuatu, where we'll be going next week. But some travel stories. Gosh, I have so many, Bill. So many travel stories. Probably
You start wherever you want. You start wherever
um,
you want. It's your show.
one that was really unexpected, I have to say, was being detained on the Chinese border. So this is also in Annex from Abroad. But what happened was I was in Hong Kong, and I got the train to Shenzhen, so up into China. There was really great shopping. I love shopping, so anywhere that's involving shopping, I'm there. So I had a fabulous time haggling with people up in Shenzhen, had my arms full of shopping. And what you've got to do when you're going on the train, you've got to go over the Chinese border to actually get into Shenzhen, but then you've got to come back through to it. So I came back standing in line, like as you do, with everyone with their head down in their mobiles. And then also I did something a bit cheeky. I'm a big photographer, so I was taking photos as well. So I was taking photos on the border, and then I walked past and it said in big letters, "Do not take photos." Well, I'd already taken some photos, so I was like, oh my God, this is a problem. I thought it was a problem at least. Got to the immigration counter, and they didn't push me through quickly like as you normally do. They look at it, they stamp it, and then they push you through. They were hesitating, and I
Hmm.
was like, this is not a good situation. What is going on? I actually said something to the guy. I don't think didn't think he knew English. And he just said, come with me. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Anyway, they'd led me into a room with some other people, so obviously detained people in this room. At the door, there was a guy with like a machine gun across his body, and I was probably the only Westerner in this room. There was people from all around the world, but not sort of a Westerner. So I sat down. It wasn't the most pleasant room that you can imagine. It was quite. I describe it in the book, but it was not what you would expect. I don't know what I expected
Hmm.
in a detaining cell or a holding room, but it wasn't what I expected. And I sat there
It
and
wasn't accommodating.
no, it wasn't accommodating. It wasn't a welcoming place, put it that way, Bill. And then I looked around, and obviously I was the centre of attention in there because they'd probably never seen a Westerner in there. There was a few things that was going on in the room, and I had to collect my thoughts really quickly. And I'm thinking, okay, why have they got me in here? I don't think I've done anything wrong other than taking photos. I wonder if that's the reason they've got me here. Anyway, so I may have only been in there for, I think, about 20 minutes, but it felt like 3 hours, as it does, when you're in situations like that. There was a few things going on in there. There was a few interactions where the guy with the gun was threatening a few people in there. So look, it made for a really entertaining story where something went really wrong, and obviously I read about it later. But I think to myself, And the moral of the story is it wasn't the photos that I took on the border. I actually had an exit visa that I had misplaced out of my passport, and they wanted to check whether I was actually going to be leaving Hong Kong. They thought I was coming to live in China and staying there. So that was the reason they had me in the room. But no one told me that because
Oh,
obviously they couldn't speak English. But one lady did
yes.
come in after about 20 minutes and told me. So yeah, got my train of freedom back to Hong Kong. And as they say, the rest is history. But I survived the situation. But yeah, it's those sorts of times that you really understand what you're made of because they're unexpected. And that's what happens with travel. Some things are unexpected. And it's how you deal with that and how you're resilient to what's happened. And you know what?
You mean besides just nervousness?
Yeah, sometimes as bad as some things can happen, I still want to go traveling. It doesn't matter. It's life. That's life, Bill. Things can happen in your own life where you've got to deal with it. It's just part of life. But yeah, I've got a lot of stories like that. But that's probably the one that it was most unexpected, I would say, in my travels.
Is that the most scared and confused that you've been traveling?
Yes, I think confused, definitely. A little bit scared. Well, I was pretty sure of myself. I thought, you know what? I've done nothing wrong. So this has got to be a mistake. I was really like, this has got to be a mistake. What have you got me in here for? Like, I'm no criminal. Last time I looked.
Right, right.
But yeah, and obviously the people that were in this room were criminals. Not that I'm an experienced person in that sort of field, but
Hmm.
that was my
Yeah. You were out
glimpse
of
at.
place
I
compared.
was out of
Yeah.
place, and that was my glimpse into that dark, seedy world. I don't ever want to go back there. Let me tell you.
No.
But yeah, I was like, this is wrong. When you know something's wrong, that was more how I was
Hmm.
feeling. Yeah, a little bit scared, but I held my own in that room. Like, towards the end, I said to him, "Why am I here? And when are you letting me out?" And he was taken aback by the confidence, really, because most of the other people in there were quite scared of him. But yeah, look, that's part of travel, and I think it's the exciting thing about travel. As long as you survive and you don't die and get in real bad danger, it's part of the allure for me. I think the adventure.
Yeah. There's so many places on your list, Linda, that I want to hear something about. And so many places that I've never been. There's one place that you have been that I've been a couple of times, and I'm interested to know what kind of stories you may have from the Czech Republic.
Czech Republic, yeah, that was such a fabulous place. I don't have any real stories about the Czech Republic, but what I would say, it's a real eclectic place. I didn't expect what I saw there. I don't know what I expected, but yeah, it was like a real blend of East and West for me,
Hmm.
but such a classy place. When we talk about Europe, Bill, the fabulous part about Europe is there's so many different diverse countries in that continent, and you could go to one end from north to south and east to west and see such different things there. That really I didn't spend a lot of time in the Czech Republic, but it's a place I think I would absolutely like to go back to. But I think the history of the place was quite interesting as you're coming into it. And I'm no expert on any of this either, but I know there was a lot of turmoil in the Czech Republic, and there was a lot of people advocating for the country. And a lot of people, this is a monument as you're walking in there, where they've got photos of them. I would consider them heroes, were involved in that turmoil. But yeah, it's such a lovely place. Really, it's like East meets West. That's how, and the same with Hungary, because Hungary's quite close to there as well. Both really, really interesting places with such interesting history, and really a lovely place to visit.
And Hungary is a place I've never been, and I haven't really thought to go. I know the Czech Republic was just formed from, of course, Czechoslovakia. I believe it was 1992 or 1993. So it's as it is. It's a relatively new country, really. But yeah, and I've only been to Prague, in the Czech Republic, but I've been a couple of times. My daughter went to college there, to university, and beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful
Mm.
place. But I digress. Let's maybe staying in Europe. You tell me, like, what's one of your favorite places and some of your favorite experiences that you've had? And I know Europe is vast, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's a place that I think we all love as travelers who have been. So yeah, what do you have from Europe that you could share?
So there's so many places there, but I would have to say I've got connections to a few places. So Ireland, a lot of my ancestors came from Northern Ireland. So Ireland always holds a special place for me. Italy, learnt languages at school when I was in high school. So I learned Italian. Italy is always a fabulous place for me because I understand the language. I'm not totally fluent in the
Can
language,
you?
but I
I
become
was
a
just going to ask if you can still speak it at least conversationally. Yeah.
yeah, I understand a lot and I can actually talk to people. What happens is it's like osmosis. So when I go there and spend a bit of time, I then end up being a bit more fluent, but I don't speak it day to day. I've got friends who are Italian, but they speak more English than Italian. But I find the more I use it, the more fluent I become. So if I spend, a few weeks in Italy, then people can ask me for directions and I'll tell them where to go and all that sort of stuff. Also, France is a really favourite place as well. Back in ancestry, we've got a French further back. But I would say probably they're the three that I probably go back to more so. France, I really love. The Louvre is a favourite place that I love to go to. I really love art. And who doesn't want to see the Mona Lisa? But obviously, you've got to get there really quick, really early in the morning because the crowds can get quite large. And, there's some fantastic art there. Also, Italy's really great for that too. So, Florence is a really favourite place in Italy. The Uffizi Gallery, I would put that up with the Louvre in Paris. Some magnificent Leonardo da Vinci art and yeah, really interested, and I did this in school as well, about the Renaissance and all the art through history. So I think there's so many countries in Europe. I'm going back there in a few months and going to a few other countries that I haven't been to, but I think there's just so much to see in Europe. It's probably a place that I go back to regularly because as you can tell by my accent, I'm Australian and we're so far away from everywhere in the world that once we go to Europe, we've got to stay there. To make it a really good trip, you've got to stay there for at least a month, if not longer, to really see everything. So, but yeah, it's probably a place that I continue to go back to, but go back to and try and see other places because there's just so many countries to see.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you have any specific experiences that you've had in anywhere in Europe, whether it's France or Italy, that you remember and recall that just stood out to you or were impactful for you?
Yeah, look, Italy's a classic for people getting robbed. Almost a young teenager tried to rob me on a bus, and I also was in a train not too long ago, probably a few years back, where a man had his wallet in the back of his pocket, which you don't do when you're in Italy. You don't. You always have, and when I'm there, I've got the backpack on the front, so everything's visible, so I can see what's going on. But there was a guy with his son, an American guy. He looked very tired, so I think he was quite jet lagged. I know I was jet lagged, and he had the same sort of tiredness in his face, so you can tell when people are jet lagged. What happened was there was a gypsy standing behind him. So we were in a train, and where the front doors are, so you've got two doors on either side. I was facing him because of the crowds, and he and his son were there, but there was a gypsy standing right behind him. He had his wallet in his back pocket. She got hold of that wallet so swiftly, like as if she was an absolute pro. Then she made the mistake of actually opening up the wallet right in view to see how much money he had in there. What happened is he caught wind of that and said to her, "Hey, you've got my wallet." And
Gosh.
tried to grab it out of her hand. He was lucky he grabbed it. She made the mistake of opening it up. So she was being a bit greedy, I think. Look,
Yeah.
again, I'm not a criminal and I don't do this sort of stuff, but if you're going to rob somebody, you better just get rid of it out of sight. That would be my instinct. Get rid of it out of sight. You don't open it up
Yeah.
to see what's in there. Like, as desperate as you might be. But that was her mistake. Anyway, she darted out of the train before he could grab her. Not that he was going to grab her, but he just wanted to give her a talking to. But I see that so often in Italy. It's so entertaining. Like, I've seen so many robberies from a distance on trains. I've been almost robbed myself. Yeah, it's always an entertaining thing. Not that it should be entertaining, but obviously when you're not involved in it, it appears that way. But what you learn, I suppose, is when you see other people being robbed, it makes you more very mindful and more self-aware about yourself and how you need to be, protective of your belongings, because your belongings are your key to actually traveling. If you don't have your belongings, your money, your passport, you're not going anywhere. You're staying there until
Mm-hmm.
everything's sorted out. So, in my opinion, that's your key. Keep them really safe, and you can learn a lot from people that happening. You're seeing that it's about being observant also. But yeah, there's probably my main stories from Italy. I've seen a lot of different things in France, which I haven't actually written about, which will probably be in the next annex from abroad. But yeah, there's many, many stories. I think, Bill, you've got to be, I'm a really observant person. I try and be anyway, because I think that's part of your security, right? When you're traveling, you've got to be really aware of what's going on around you. So I've really honed that skill as a traveller, especially as a solo traveller. But yeah, that being observant's actually quite good, because then it is actually material for your books as well, because you're seeing what's
Sure.
happening to other people and things that's happening to you as well.
Yeah. And so because you're typically a solo traveler, when you go to places, do you make it a point to talk to whether it's locals or other travelers, if you know that somebody that happens to be in the same place that you are is a vacationer or someone who's traveling? Do you talk to others, or do you kind of keep to yourself?
Oh no, I talk to others all the time. I'm a big talker, so I love talking to people. I love finding out about places. So, obviously I blog about these places that I visit. How do you find out about places? How do you find out the nitty-gritty about places? You have to talk to locals. You have to ask people questions. I love doing that, because as a traveler, you could just do the tourist attractions. You're not really learning much about that place. You may learn that where the Trevi Fountain in Rome is, and Piazza Nirvana and all those other places, but have you actually understood and learned a bit more about that place? You can only do that obviously by doing a bit of slow travel. But if you haven't got time to do slow travel, then you need to go on tours with people, ask guides questions, have conversations. If you're going down to get a cappuccino at that cafe, learn a bit of the language, start talking to the person behind the counter. And it's just through conversations that you learn a lot about places. And then as a travel agent, I needed to travel to these places and understand what they were about, because these were the questions that clients would be asking. So it was
Hmm.
something that I've done ever since being a travel agent. It's just like second nature to me. And I like finding out about other people, finding out about other cultures. What it does, it builds a picture in your mind about the place. And then when someone asks you, and I get asked recommendations quite a bit about places that I've been to, I can visualize that place in my mind, and I can really give them a very holistic overview of that place, down to how much things cost, where to go, what to do, what the must-see places are. Um, so it's
Hmm.
something that I always do when I travel. It helps with the blogging, because you build that picture and that story about the place, but then it also helps with the travel knowledge, and recommending to others. Yeah, you can't do that if you just go, all right, I'm going there for 2 days. Let's go to all the tourist attractions. Let's go here, 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 and here. You're only touching the surface. You're not getting down into what the essence of that place is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've said many times, you can Google a place or even chat GPT a place and get the recommendations and do that. But you're doing the same things that hundreds of thousands of other people have done. And that's fine. There's a place for that. But for me, when I strike up conversations with someone, especially if they're local and they speak my language, but even with other tourists, because I'm always,
Mm.
I mean, listen, I have this podcast, right? I mean, this is all about hearing other people's travel stories and experiences. So I clearly have an interest in it. So I love talking to other travelers about where did you just come from? Where are you going next? What have you done? What have you seen? What happened when you were here? So that for me, that's part of what makes travel and makes stories and memories for myself, is meeting these other people and hearing their stories. I want to hear from you through whether it's some conversations that you've had with someone who is local anywhere in the world, or even because I love doing travel tours, especially walking tours when I get to a place, if I'm not going to be there for a long time, and learning as much as I can.
Mm.
So has there been any that just stuck out to you as just a really impactful conversation, or just a fun or funny, or maybe you even got to maybe hang out with someone who talked to you a little bit more in depth, or anything like that you could share?
So I was in Sweden, and it's funny that you talk about free walking tours are the best things to do when you travel. So I was in Stockholm and went on a free walking tour there. Um, there was a really interesting story that I knew a little bit about, but I didn't know a lot about. We walked around Stockholm, and that's a fabulous place, by the way, if anyone really wants to see something like a fantastic country in Scandinavia, because there's so many of them there. She took us around Stockholm. She took us to a bank, a very famous bank, and it's the reason that Stockholm syndrome was created. So I don't know whether you know the story, but there was back in the 60s a bank robbery. And what happened was people were captured or held hostage within this bank in Stockholm. And what happened was they spent a lot of time with these robbers, the robbers of the bank, and actually started understanding them and not being scared of them, but actually building a relationship with these robbers inside, where they were inside the bank. And what happened was they actually named Stockholm Syndrome after what had occurred within this bank. So what happened was, I think at the end of the siege, the actual hostages were on the side of the bank robbers, and they were advocating for them, which was crazy
Gosh.
because and again, haven't never been in this situation, but if you were in a siege in a bank and they were holding you hostage, I don't know about you, I'd be feeling pretty scared, and I'd be pretty scared of the people that were doing it to me, especially if they had guns. But and it was so interesting because I'd heard Stockholm Syndrome, but I didn't actually understand what it was. But that's how it came about. And that was such an interesting story. And they actually showed us the bank that it happened in. And I was like, this is crazy. So yeah, and I think, yeah, that's the thing about travel. There's these guides and these locals that take you around. You would never find out these stories unless they told you. And they actually showed you the places that were pivotal inside that actual story. But yeah, that was one story that blew my mind. We couldn't go into the bank because it was over the weekend, so it wasn't open. But I would have loved to have
Hmm.
walked in there because that would have been even more mind blowing. But yeah, it's those sorts of stories that you can't put a price on because you wouldn't know about them unless you obviously Googled. But yeah, that was one story that I was like, now I understand all about that when I'd heard about it, but not really sort of understood.
Yeah, I think once you said that story, it kind of rings a bell. I think I have heard that before, but if you would have just asked me what is the meaning of Stockholm syndrome before you said that, I wouldn't have been able to answer you. That's really cool, especially to
Yes,
see the place where the phrase comes from. That's
yes,
awesome.
yes, yeah.
Anything else from just interacting with locals anywhere that stands out to you as just maybe, I don't want to say life altering, but a very memorable interaction you've had with anyone? Before I do have a follow up after this.
Yeah, gosh, there's so many places, Bill. I'm just trying to think of one. I think one that really was educational because I'm not really across anything sort of in the Muslim world. When I was in Dubai and also probably Malaysia, so earlier on I went to Malaysia. Malaysia's a sort of a more moderate Muslim country. I think in Malaysia, in the beginning of the mornings, they have prayers and they go across the whole city and you can hear them on a loudspeaker. And I was bit younger, when I was early in the travel, I was like, what's this noise? Like, I just didn't understand it. And then what happened, it was happening every morning. And then I realized, obviously asked somebody, it was the call to prayer early in the morning. So that was earlier on. But then I went to Dubai and they just ramp it up another notch. So they're probably a little bit more strict, I suppose, in their Muslim ideals, which is totally fine. And I didn't hear any of those morning prayers, but I had met some people, and again, these are from Annex Abroad, where there was some stories about what happens when you work over in Dubai and some of those Middle Eastern countries. And that really quite blew my mind, because I thought to myself, we have such freedom. I know, the US and also Australia and other Western countries, we have a lot of freedom when we work for an employer. But yeah, I heard some stories about things that probably, well, I won't really get into them now, but where the freedom was not there. They were sort of migrants that came into the country, and sort of how they were treated over there. So it sort of built a bit more of a picture about, and I'm no expert on anything to do with the Muslim world, and I respect every different culture. I think, each to their own and all that. But yeah, there was a lot of things that I learnt that sort of built more of a picture about that way of life. And I think unless you actually live in a place like that for a long, long time, you don't understand the things that you can and can't do. I was over there it was Ramadan. So Ramadan is really strict in the Middle East. What happens is the tourists can go to the shopping centres, but obviously everyone who's a Muslim can't eat. They're all fasting and they can't drink or eat. So when you go into the shopping centres, there's big black curtains that cover it up, just so it's better for the people that are fasting. What happened when I was over there, I actually had just been to Europe and actually was a bit sick. So and again, I was a bit jet lagged, and I was I had a drink of water, but I had like one of those dissolvable vitamin tablets inside just to give myself a boost, like the Baroccas. I don't know whether you have them over in the US, but they're like vitamin
Yeah, we
tablets
have
that you
things
can,
like that.
dissolve
Yeah,
in the
we call them
water.
airborne.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah, we call them Baroccas. And what you do is you put them in water and then they dissolve and then they become like a vitamin drink. Anyway, I was quite unwell. I'd just been to the doctor's surgery in one of the shopping centres in Dubai, in one of the malls. And I went into the doctor's surgery. And obviously, I'm not a citizen there. I have travel insurance and all the rest of it. I was thinking, okay, should I go to the doctor? Just wasn't sure whether it was getting to that point where I needed to go to the doctor. Went into the doctor. Oh, I asked them, I said, just want to know if I can make an appointment. And they said, yeah, we can get you in, another hour. That'll be $250 US. And I was like,
Boy,
and that was for a 10-minute consultation. And I was like, okay, no, that's okay.
maybe I'll self-diagnose instead.
I think I might just go to the chemist. So that's what I ended up doing, getting the vitamin. But yeah, like, and fair enough. Like, if you're a citizen there, it probably wouldn't have been that much. But again, if someone comes to Australia and they're not a citizen, they're probably paying that much money in Australian dollars as well. So each to their own. Anyway, it was Ramadan, but obviously being a little bit phasey in the head because I was a little bit unwell. I knew that they couldn't eat, but then I didn't realise they couldn't drink. And so here I am, dissolving my drink inside a bottle and then getting looks and going, oh, well, I don't understand why they're looking at me, but obviously being sick and a little bit out of it. And then I went, oh my God, I'm drinking in front of them. And I'm like, oh, hell. And then realised,
Like you're being
because I'm getting
insensitive and you didn't mean to be. Yeah.
yes, and look, I'm not normally that sort of person, but because I was obviously had a head cold and congested sinuses, and when you're sick, you're not yourself, right? It just didn't twig, and I obviously jet lagged as well. Anyway, I started getting some looks, and then I went, oh my God, I shouldn't be doing this. So what I did was I went into the toilet, not into the toilet cubicle, but I went into and I made sure, or went to a place that was a little bit more not where a lot of people were, and then drank
Private.
the drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get into situations when you travel, and obviously you get sick as well. So that wasn't really my It's not really a good excuse. But look, I did learn. It was like, no, if it's Ramadan, no drinking, no eating. You can't do any of that. Yeah. But you live and learn, right,
Wow.
Bill? And I didn't get,
Oh
the
boy.
police didn't arrest me. I think it was getting close
No,
though,
that's
because
good.
there was a few people that were giving me bad looks, and I was thinking, oh my God, I was like, look, why are they looking at me like that? And then it twigged to me, and I went, oh my God, what have I done? And then realised my mistake.
Jeez.
But yeah, many
It's an
stories, so many
innocent mistake,
stories.
though. That's an innocent mistake. So,
Yes.
one of the things that I don't usually talk about in detail in the podcast, and mostly it just sort of happens organically because
Mhm.
most of my guests are from the United States. I'm really interested to hear your experiences of the United States as an outsider.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. I have been to the US quite a few times. So I've been to Honolulu. I've been there quite a few times. As an Australian, we love going there. And I know it's one of the states of the US. I've also travelled to a few other places within the US over the years. I think, can I say the US has changed a lot over the years from when I first went there? And yeah, I think,
In what way
in what
do you
way?
feel,
Well,
or ways?
I think when I first went there, like as a solo traveller, I went to New York and I went to LA. And where else did I go? I think I went to down to Mexico my first time. Obviously, I was a lot younger, and very new in my travel journey. Everything was so different. So New York was very, very much like any big city, like Sydney, Singapore, all those sorts of places, very big city. When I went to LA, that was very different. It was very much laid back and very different to New York. Like New York, it's like everyone's on a mission and they're very much going on that
Like,
mission. Any big city, focused. LA was very much laid back, and I suppose, and I mean this in a respectful way, they let everything else hang out, sort of, in a way. That's what I first made me think of LA. It was my first experience about guns as well. So we don't have guns in Australia. We had a bit of a massacre happened quite a few years ago, and then we've never been a big gun country. But when that massacre happened, everyone had to turn their guns in. Not that there was many guns in Australia to start with, anyway. So we don't have guns here. It's not something
very
that is
interesting.
prevalent in our society. I mean, I'm sure some of the criminals do, but citizens don't have guns at all in Australia. So when I was in LA, I went on a tour. I was on a tour with some Korean and some Japanese people, and the guy was taking us around to the different places in LA. So we went to Malibu, Marina Del Rey, and some of the different places in LA. It was quite interesting. I was sitting in the front seat, and we had everyone else in the sort of the back of the van. And he goes, "Open up the glove box." I opened up the glove box, and he had 5 handguns inside the glove box. And
5.
5. And I was speechless and quite stunned. And I think, yeah, it sort of blew my mind. And I was like, are they your guns? Like being a bit innocent. I was like, they're your guns? And he said, yep. And I said, how come you've got 5 of them?
That's a good
He didn't,
question.
he didn't answer the question. He goes, oh, they all do different things. And I'm like, okay, I don't think I want to know anymore. And then he goes, you know what, Linda? I wouldn't hesitate using any of them if I needed to. And I was like, okay, can we close the glove box? And yeah, that's the thing that really, anyone mentions LA, I know I've been there many times after that, but that would be the first thing that I think of. It's always the memory. And yeah, it was pivotal for me because one, we don't like, I've never seen a gun ever until then. I'd never seen one. And yeah, so that was my first trip to LA. I've been there a few times. I just was over in the States last year, actually. I was in LA and Miami. So I've been to Miami a few times. I think it's a very different world just to someone who lives in Australia, if I can say that. One, you guys are allowed to have guns. It's not something that we can do here. And yeah, I think in a way Australia and the US are very similar, but very different,
Hmm.
if I can say that. So
Yeah.
as an Australian growing up, we've had a lot of English and American influence. So a lot of people, and myself included, a lot of us came from Ireland, Scotland, England. Our ancestors came from there. So
Hmm.
that was a massive influence for us. So as growing up, we used to see a lot of English programs. We understand the English humour because it's our humour. Like English humour
Mm.
is also Australian humour in a way. Like very, not exactly, but parts of it is
When
very,
when you say English, do you mean
yeah.
like British? Because I think British humor is very different than American humor.
Yes, I talk about British humour. So British humour
Yeah.
is very
I love
sarcastic.
British humor, by the way. I
It's
love
very
it. I'm a very
sarcastic.
sarcastic person. Yeah.
And Australians are sarcastic as well, but we're nice about it. So we can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
very ironic and sarcastic. So our sarcasm is derived from the English, the Irish, and the Anglo settlers that came to Australia. Having also grown up with a lot of American influence, like we used to see a lot of American shows, and we had a lot of American influence growing up. So we've built a picture of the US in our minds as kids, and then we go there, and some of it resonates, and then obviously it's like going to any country. It's very different. It's not what you expect.
Sure.
So, having grown up with that, I can see a lot of similarities between the US and Australia. And that's probably why we've always had that big bond, through the different world wars and all that, because we do have common ground about things. But
Hmm.
then we also are very different, I say. And I say this respectfully, but there's things that the Australians do that potentially are different to what, the US. One thing would be the guns. We don't have guns.
Hmm.
We don't carry guns. To get a license to get a gun, you've got to be like a farmer or, for like hunting and all that sort of stuff. It's
Yeah, I
more
was going to
those
say
sort.
you have to have an actual need for it, something you can
Yeah,
document. Yeah.
yeah. And I think when I first went there and over the years, countries do change. Like I think Australia's changed as a country. I think Europe's changed as a country. I think I can see the change because having been there and been back, periodically, the costs are becoming more expensive. Things change, but it's like an evolution. But it's not just the US, it's the whole world evolves. So
Sure. Yep.
as it grows, as
Absolutely.
it gets older, as it matures, so yeah, I'm fond of the US. I've spent done quite a few trips. I have to be honest with you at the moment, Bill, I'm not sure whether I'll be going there because it's a bit of turmoil happening over there, I would say. But it's certainly a place that I would visit in the future. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so you told me something that was probably shocking, and I don't know if I would say the word scary, but shocking for you when you first got to LA. And you said, the US has changed over the years in your experience. And I absolutely it has, even living here. And, sometimes when you live in the place, you kind of have blinders and the change happens so gradually, typically speaking, that you sometimes you don't even notice it. But absolutely things have changed. But for your experiences, can we flip that and say, okay, well, this was maybe not terrifying, but a crazy experience with 5 handguns in the glove box of a
Yeah.
vehicle? But is there something you can tell me that was really fun or something that you really enjoyed being here in the US? And
Well,
it can even be in Hawaii, which is one of the favorite places of a lot of my guests.
yeah. Um, well, one that's recent is I went to Miami to see Taylor Swift in concert just last year.
Are you a Swiftie?
I am a Swiftie, yes. Not from
Nice.
way back, but probably from about the last 10 or 11 years, I would say I'm a Swiftie. Yes, absolutely. She's awesome.
That's great.
So I went to Canada last year, and I've got distant relatives that live in Toronto or out there on the outskirts. So mainly I was going there. I've never seen Canada. I hadn't up until that point. So I was going there to visit, but also see them. And then also I was going to Miami because Miami is always a good time. I love going there. The people are fabulous and the shopping is awesome as well. But by chance, when I was doing my research, I was like, oh, she's actually in Miami. Okay, let's see if we can get a ticket. And then the rest is history. But yeah, that was awesome. I've seen her in Australia but I think it was on another level over in Miami. The stadium was large, and I've never actually been to a concert overseas, and so it was an interesting experience for me. Also, something on my bucket list that I'd always wanted to do, go to a really big concert overseas. So yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it's I think, what other things have I done in the US? Honolulu's always a good time also. I think, I know this is going to sound funny, Bill. I've been to Honolulu that many times that I could tell people where to go in Ala Moana. I have been to Honolulu probably about 11 times.
It's an easier trip for you, isn't it? Because
Yes,
that's
yes.
probably the fastest way to get to the US is from that direction.
Yeah, and also what we used to do when I was in the airlines, we would go once a year, take an empty suitcase, and then just go buy presents for everybody and ourselves. So we
Mm,
used to go for like 3-day trips as a travel agent, and then we'd rock up to work with a full suitcase still in our clothes and go straight to work. But yeah, Honolulu is fabulous as well. But yeah, I think had many interesting conversations over there.
tell me one. Tell me some conversations.
One conversation I had with someone who was actually an Australian who was living over there and the experiences that she had over there. So I think her husband was Hawaiian. I think that's what she said to me. And so she was an Australian, but she now lives in Hawaii. But it was, as much as, as I said, we grow up with the US influence, it was still a culture shock for her living there. Because when you're on holidays in Honolulu, it's much like the Gold Coast in Australia. It's like, or Bali, that's another place that Australians go to. But the culture shock for her as an Australian, actually then having to live in the American society, it was I mean, she said that she loves it now, but it was like she'd just been married to him. So, obviously getting used to that as well. But then there was also living in the US, although it's not a bad place in the US to live, I would say, Honolulu. Not that I've lived there, but, it would be a nice place. I think everyone would be happy, and you've got a lot of tourists there and all that. But yeah, she said the way of life, I don't think she'd done any research about it. So everything happened to her was a bit more of a culture shock. She spoke about the guns, and that's not something as an Australian we get exposure to really. But yeah, she said she wouldn't have it any other way now. But there was like that
It's
that
just
period of getting used to a different
adjustment.
way of
Yeah, it took her
life.
time.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
and
about.
which is go ahead.
And like for instance, and I don't know whether you would notice this being an American, but when you're going down the main strip of Honolulu, sometimes outside the hotels, they have people touting for going to driving ranges to go learn how to use guns. And she said to me that happened to her very quickly once she arrived in Honolulu. And she was sort of taken aback by that because, what do you mean?
It's not in
A
your.
driving
It's not.
range to learn guns? And it was like, oh, and then she had to think, oh, that's right, they have guns here. But it was something that sort of shocked her. And then she actually said something to him and said, well, where I come from, we don't have guns. And
Yeah,
this bit of a strange thing that you're offering me. I don't know whether she took it up. She didn't tell me, but yeah, they're just some of the things that had happened to her. But it's part of the osmosis, right? You've got to get into the society, but you only do that when you live there. Being on a trip
yeah,
somewhere is very different. You're seeing it through rose-colored glasses, really, until you actually live
sure.
somewhere. That's a totally different
And
situation.
and the culture shock that you're explaining that she or describing that she's experienced, I think, and I have not yet been to Hawaii, but I've talked to people. Actually, episode 5 is my friend Jimbo, who he's lived in Hawaii for some time, and he talked extensively about Hawaii. And I feel like if you have only ever lived in Hawaii and then you came to the continental United States, I feel like that could also be a further culture shock. I don't
Yes,
know that, but I feel
yes.
like even being in Hawaii is still different than being in the continental United States. So I wonder, and we'll never know probably, but just,
Mm.
hypothetically, I wonder what her culture further shock would be like if she was to move to, say, I don't even know, just the middle of the United States continental. Like
Yeah,
it's just crazy to think.
yeah, yeah. I think, look, I reckon, yeah, it would have been like a different, like another, hurdle for not a bad hurdle, but
Hmm.
yeah, a bit of culture shock. I lost, like, it's just someone that I met, so not in contact with her, but yeah, it's interesting the stories that you hear. And I try and capture some of these in from annex from abroad too, because it's not just about the situations I've found myself in. It's also people that I've met, because they've got such interesting stories too, where things may not have gone as planned, but that makes for a good story, right? And as I say in my tagline in the book, because we all like a bit of drama, right? Because we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
And
yeah.
so we're getting to a point where we should probably get close to wrapping, unfortunately. There is one more place that I want to touch on where I feel like,
Mm.
if nothing else, even if you don't have a very specific story about, which I'd like to hear if you do, but was the Vatican impactful for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do have a story about that as well. Well, not actually, sort of connected to the Vatican, but Vatican, that's a magnificent place. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So just before COVID, I was in Italy and I was there at Easter. So as you know, Easter is a big time in Rome and the Vatican. Because of the
Yeah.
Pope. The girl that I met, she was American. She was a lovely person who I still have contact with. She's fabulous. She was going there primarily for the Pope, to see the Pope. So what they do every Easter is they have him go. Well, when the Pope was alive, they used to have him go up to a hill. I forget the name of the hill. I think it's Palatine Hill. I think it is, where there's like a procession, and it's like simulating the procession that happened back in the day. But he goes and there's a flaming cross. And so what happens is you go to the Colosseum, which is where we went. We've got to go through all the blockade, like the police blockades, and get searched through security. And then what happens is the Pope is on the hill, and then he does like a sermon of some sort. I'm not sure. I'm not all up with that sort of stuff, but it's like he does a talk up on the hill and everyone's down below in the Colosseum. So um, I talk about the story, and I'm like the girl that I met, she absolutely was going there purely for him to do this event. And she said to me, "You want to come?" And I went, "You know what? I've never done this before. Let's do it." So we went. And so the story is, obviously I'm not up with all that stuff. I respect everyone and all their beliefs, but it's not something
Hmm.
that I practice a lot.
Hmm.
And but I'm still a Christian, I still believe in God and all that. So
Hmm. I agree.
after about 5 or 10 minutes, I was like, okay. Well, and I'm just waiting for what else was to happen, but it was just what happens. So he was talking, and yeah, I sort of lost interest, if I can say that respectfully. But what I saw was something I've never seen before. I've seen thousands of people mesmerized, looking at the Pope, looking at what was going on. And it was something that I've never experienced. I again could see this, and it was like something I've never seen before. It was like everyone was in a trance, and understand that that was what they were there for and all the rest of it. I ended up on the ground with some young teenagers and kids, and we were talking Italian to each other. And they were swearing in Italian about how much they didn't want to be there, and I was sitting,
No.
and because I understand, I was laughing my head off, and then they started to, obviously. Yeah, I won't repeat what they were saying, but you can just imagine the swear words that were coming out of their mouth in Italian.
Oh my gosh.
But it was quite entertaining for me. I couldn't stand up because it was so like, if you lost your spot from standing up, then you lost your spot from seeing the Pope, because it
Yeah.
was just so crowded. There were so many people from around the world there. So technically, what would have happened in the Vatican, but it was up on the hill of the Colosseum. Fantastic backdrop, by the way. And so yeah, so I wrote a story about this in Annex from Abroad. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience, something that I never
Yeah.
thought I'd do, but it was because I met somebody that was doing it, and I thought, you know what? Let's do it. She was
Yeah.
doing it. She was the main reason she was there. I didn't think I was going to do it. until it happened, and then we did it, and yeah, it was great. Maybe if I was a Catholic, I would have got more out of it, I suppose. But and obviously I don't. And it was a learning experience for me too, because I didn't know what happened at Easter. I mean, I know what happens at
Yeah,
Easter, what happens in my life, but going to a country that is very Catholic like that, it was like on another level. The whole of Rome was
sure.
buzzing. Like, I've never seen that many people in one place. It was just phenomenal. And that in itself was an experience. It was like, yeah, it was like taking over tourism to another level, I think.
Yeah, and I find that no matter what, and I haven't experienced things like that. I've been to the Vatican, but not during Easter. I
Mm,
find like hearing other people's stories about religious experiences, even if they weren't something, it wasn't their religion, but just
mm,
being in an experience that's religious,
mm,
to me can be very impactful. Just understanding how important it is for all of these people that are there witnessing it and the emotion
mm,
that they go through. Like I have that trait that other people's emotion sort of radiates into me, like whether I
mm,
like it or not. So
mm,
if I see you know a sea of people laughing, it makes me want to laugh, even if I don't get the joke or
mm,
don't think it's funny. And
mm.
by the same token, when I see other people getting emotional or feeling something that's very deep and profound to them, I feel that it's very deep and profound to me just because of their reactions, even though I don't understand what's going on. So I
Yeah,
love things like that. I think it's exceptional and wonderful.
yeah. And it was very moving. Like, it was like a force. It felt like you were being pulled into
I
some
believe
sort
it.
of force. It was something you can't explain. You'd have to be there. But it was, yeah. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. I absolutely did enjoy it. But I think I would have got more out of it had I been, you know,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
I was raised Catholic. I normally wouldn't get into something like this, but I was raised
yeah,
Catholic, and I understand how sometimes things can be maybe a little bit long and drawn out. And no offense
mm,
to Catholics that are listening,
mm,
and but if you are Catholic and you're listening, you probably get what I'm saying because
yeah,
it's true.
yeah,
It is what it is.
yeah.
But
And had I,
one of the things. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and had I known I was going to do it, I probably would have prepared as well, because it happened on the day, and it was flying by the seat of my pants, and I'm not a preparer. I like to know, but obviously things like that happen when you travel. Get invited somewhere and you can't really prepare. But yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're but that's when moments become magical. That's when
Yes,
you allow yourself to do something on a whim, that's when things happen. And I think it's so important to not be so rigid and planned when you travel. If you want to really have true experiences, allow yourself some freedom to do something unexpected. So
yes,
I
absolutely.
will say I know without a shadow of a doubt there are so many stories, and even you've touched on a number of times. You have stories in the Antics series that you have that we could have probably touched on and talked about, but we are getting to a point where I don't want to keep you too much longer. I do have some final questions for you, however, if you're game.
Yes.
And one thing we did not really touch on, really, I don't think at all. I'm trying to think back. This is bizarre. We never really touched on food anywhere in the travels that you'd been. So I do have a question. So maybe you're not a foodie, maybe you are quote unquote foodie, but I want to know of all the places in the world that you've been, not at home,
Hmm.
where is the favorite meal that you ever had in your life? And it doesn't have to be at a restaurant, it can be anywhere, just not at home.
I had an Italian meal down on the beach at Positano, so down the Amalfi Coast. That was my most favourite meal.
Why? What was it? What did you have? What happened?
Well, obviously, I had a magnificent view, so that was fabulous. I love Italian food, but my issue is I'm lactose intolerant. But they were able to make me a fantastic pizza, gluten free and lactose free, and it was still magnificent and lush and soft and glorious. That was the beauty of me being able to speak Italian to them, to tell them that I needed them to do that, and also without cheese. But it was the most luscious pizza I've ever tasted in my whole life. And yeah, and the hospitality they gave me while I was down there was fabulous as well. So yeah, I would have to say that was the top of one of the best meals I've had in my travels.
And so, and I've talked about this before, that when you get a pizza in Italy, it's meant to be a meal for one person. It's when we get a
Yes.
pizza in America, it's massive and you share it with everyone. And if you eat it by yourself, you're very gluttonous, typically. But the pizzas, and it's typically a thinner crust, so it's not so dense and it doesn't fill you up as much, and it's glorious. Do you think that the place that you were in, yes, the pizza itself was great and magnificent, but do you feel like the location you were in and the view that you had, and I'm sure the fact that you spoke Italian with them, it goes a long way. Speaking the language goes a long way. Do you feel like that added to it, or was it like, could you have just had that pizza? The waiters were standoffish and you still would have said this was one of the greatest meals, or it's the experience, right? It's not just the food.
Yeah, I think you know what, food is an experience. So I could have had a pizza, and I probably did when I went to Florence as well. But it's about the experience. It's about your surroundings, right? And about how you're treated. Food. One thing about the Italians is food is a celebration for them. And it's a way
Yes.
of showing that they care for people as well. I think when we eat normally, not everyone, but sometimes we eat because we've got to, and we eat quickly, and then we get on and we do the rest of the
Hmm.
things we've got to do in life. For them, it's more of a celebration. So they have multiple courses. It's a time where they can meet with their family and their friends. They spread out their food. So they eat a course and then they have a bit of a chat and a bit of a drink, and then they get to their next course. They make it an experience when it comes to eating. And I think they do it really well. They'll never get indigestion because they're always spacing out their food. And
Hmm.
with the amount of food they eat, you would think that they would be quite large, but they also do a lot of walking and they do a lot of exercise. So they really make it into an experience. So I think
Well,
when I
they do, but
I
it's
get
also it's very clean food. It's very fresh food. Nothing is like in the United States. I don't know about Australia. We load up on preservatives. We want things to last as long as possible. And in Italy, at least in the places that I've been a number of places. It's everything's fresh. They're
yes,
picking it or growing it and whatever, and they're using it right away. You're not getting all the crap that we get here, at
yeah,
least.
yep, you can taste the difference too. You can taste the difference between
Thousand
something
percent.
that's yeah, and it's like it's homegrown, it's just been picked or whatever it is. So yeah, they make it an experience, and it's like their celebration. They're celebrating the food they've cooked, and they're giving that to you. Obviously, you're paying for it, but they're giving that to you as their gift, to you. So I think yes, it was a wonderful backdrop that I had my meal in, but I think it's an experience in Italy. That's one thing that they do really well. And there's other countries in the world that also do it. I think the French are very good also at doing that. But yeah, I'd have to say it wasn't just the pizza, it was the whole setup, the whole environment around me, the whole experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like there's a difference here too. And there's places that you go, even you mentioned New York City, LA, big cities where there's a lot of population and there's a lot of tourists and there's a lot of people coming in and out. And I feel like, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure that there's places that are that stand out differently, but we churn out the meals so fast because we just want to make sure we turn the table so we get that guest satisfied and they're gone. We can get another couple in to sit down, and then we make more money. And I don't think I just feel like in my experiences in Italy, there's just more love and care put into it that just
Mm,
it's not just about just let's get this person fed so they'll leave and someone else can come in. It's really I want to take care of this person. I'm proud of what I'm putting out,
mm.
and yeah, there's a pride thing, I think.
Yes, I
So,
totally agree with you, Bill.
yeah. So that's awesome. That's wonderful. You're bringing me back. I love Italy so much. I've been twice and I will definitely be back multiple times. There's so much more that I need to explore there. I want to know, this is one of my favorite questions I ask. And when I first started the podcast, I questioned myself, should I ask this question? But I love some of the answers that I've gotten. So I want to know, of all the places in the world that you've been all over,
Mm.
what's one place that if I said to you right now, Linda, I will pay for everything, you can go for free. What place that you've been would you say, no, thank you, I'm good? And why? And it doesn't have to be a negative thing. And you might just have, maybe you've experienced it and you're happy. But what place would you
Yeah.
not go back?
Not go back, I'd say maybe China. And the reason for that, look, I've been a few times, but I think there are so many places to visit in the world. And what I try and do, look, I have favourite countries that I go back to, but I try not to double up on the countries because I just think that we have a limited time here on Earth,
Yes,
and I
yes.
want to make the best use of my time and see the most amazing places in the world. And I
We're
think,
kindred spirits.
yes, yep. And it's, it's a great place too, but I just think there's so many other places that I haven't been to that are on the list that I just need to get to. So that would be the main place I would say.
Okay. You felt like you've seen enough, you've done enough, and you got your fill of China. Have you been there
Yeah.
more than once or just one time?
Yeah, look, I've been a few times. So yeah, and I think I've seen what I wanted to say, and I think that yeah, there's other places on the bucket list that need fulfilling.
When you when you when you talk about this, is something, this is not one of my final questions that I usually ask, and I just am curious about it myself because this is a topic that has come up on other episodes as well. Is the thought of a bucket list, and there are many people who travel to check mark that I've been to this place. I
Mm.
don't feel like that's you. I feel like when you go to a place, you want to experience it more than just, I was there. I went to Paris and I saw the Eiffel Tower. I was only there for a day, but I can say I was there. I
Yeah.
don't feel like that's you. I feel like when you go somewhere, you'd like to spend more time and maybe see other areas than just the highlights, right?
Mm.
Is that true? When you go somewhere, it's not just to check a box. It's because you actually want to spend some time and experience it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not just ticking the country off a list. It's about something that's intrigued me about the place, something that I want to learn about the place. So, for instance, there's a place that I went to probably after COVID, which was Seoul in South Korea. That had been a place that I'd always been really intrigued about. So, I've been to quite a few countries in Asia, but it was a place that I really wanted to go to. There was something about it that just tweaked my interest, and it was something, it's a place that not many people go to. I think it's becoming more popular now, but not many people used to go to it, and maybe North Korea's got something to do with that. But yeah, so it's not just about what's on the list, it's what's piqued my interest. I might have had a conversation with someone and they've said, oh, they've been to this place, and they've told me an interesting story about it, and it's like, oh, that sounds really like a place that I want to go to. So it's just about, for me, I'm a lifelong learner. I want to learn
Yeah.
about places. I want to learn about people. The only way you can do that is to travel to new places. You can read, you can
Yep.
research, you can watch documentaries on these things. It's different when you're actually there, Bill. You've actually got to be there to really get that learning sometimes and learn about the places. So yeah, yes, I have a bucket list. I'm sure a lot of people have got bucket lists, but there's sort of, there might be dreams or things that I want to learn about that are attached to that bucket list, to some of those countries.
Yeah, there should be some selfishness in a way about your travel, in that not being selfish when you're there and being rude to people or anything like that, but when you travel, it should be about what are you going to get out of it. I think is kind of what we're both saying, is if I'm going somewhere, I don't necessarily want to just see the sights. I want to get something out of this that I can remember for the rest of my life. And I want these experiences. And you know what? For me, again, this is the being selfish part. I want experiences that I can have that you didn't have,
Mm.
or not necessarily that you didn't, but I want personal experiences that I can't just read a blog post on a Google search or something like that. I want something that's very meaningful to me. So I seek out those types of things. And so, yeah, when I go somewhere, it's not just to check it off a list, but it's because I want some meaning from it. So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
The next question I have, which is a flip, a full 180 from my last question, is of all of the hundreds of places that you've been, I think we can probably say not hundreds of countries, but hundreds of cities that you've been. Where is the one place that, even though you want to visit as many places as you can to get those experiences, where do you have to go back?
Where I have to go back to Thailand. Thailand is just, yeah, there's so much going on in Thailand. It seems to be a place I go back to, but there's different parts of Thailand that you can visit. So I went to Bangkok. I've been to Bangkok a few times. Obviously, you go via there sometimes to go to Europe, but most recently went to Phuket, which I hadn't been to in Thailand. But there's so many wonderful islands there.
Hmm.
And then also went to Phi Phi Island, which I'd never been to. So there's certain places in the world that have so much to offer where you couldn't see all of it. You couldn't see all those islands in one trip, but it's a place you go, okay, well, I'm going to go back. We'll spend, a week or two in that place and then go back. So, yeah, place that I know I will definitely go back to is Thailand.
Wonderful. It's on my list to go. Almost went a couple of years ago, and things shifted for one reason or another. We did South America, which I would not trade for anything in this world, but it's definitely on my list to go. And it's not a huge country, but there's enough there, I think, that you can spend some time and really see a lot of different types of regions in one place. But
Yeah.
and it's very affordable, isn't it? Once you're there.
Oh, absolutely. Thailand,
So
anywhere in Asia
that's
is very
wonderful.
affordable. Especially for Australians because we're so close. But I think even for you guys, it's affordable. Yeah, if anyone's on a budget, absolutely, you would really, I'd really recommend Asia because a lot of Asia is quite affordable, and you get a lot for your money.
Yeah, and we didn't touch on a place that I would like to sometime, not today, but we will. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Vietnam at some point as well, because that is also very high on my list to visit. So, I mean, unless you have anything very quick that you wanted to mention from Vietnam, because I've just heard such amazing things about the people there and
Yeah,
just being there, the culture, the beauty, and especially the people.
yeah, the people are fabulous. Vietnam is amazing. I would highly recommend that. If any of your listeners love to have spa treatments, massages, foot massages, facials, beauty treatments, they are so cheap. My recommendation is if you want to stay in a hotel that's got a spa attached to it, what I usually do when I go there every afternoon after I've done my shopping or my um, investigating, I go down there for a spa treatment. And you know what? They're so cheap that you could do one every day, and it still wouldn't cost you what one would cost you back at home. The food is amazing. The shopping's great. Yeah, they've got really good shopping. You can get in a taxi or cab. That's really cheap. Like normally taxis and cabs are expensive. Instead of walking somewhere, you can walk also. But if you're going somewhere a little bit further where you couldn't walk to it, just you grab a cab and it costs you absolutely, in under $5 for
It's like a
quite a long
dollar
way.
or less,
It's
a few dollars.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, $5 for quite a long way away. Not even $5. The best thing about it is exchange rate. You're getting a phenomenal exchange rate against the Australian dollar, the US dollar, and things are so cheap. It's a really great place, and the people, they're amazing, totally amazing, and so welcoming. Again, it's a very diverse place. There's a lot of places to see. You've got Hanoi, you've got Ho Chi Minh City. There's a lot of history there also. I think from the American perspective, there's one thing that you can do is go to the War Remnants Museum, which I went to in Ho Chi Minh, and it talks about the Vietnam War and so if you're into all that sort of stuff, it's also that, but also with diversity of religions there also, it's quite an amazing place and very affordable if you're on a budget.
Yeah, and you might not think as an American that they would be so welcoming there, but I've heard that obviously because of what happened in the 70s, but they welcome
Mm.
everyone. But and for some reason, it seems especially Americans. It's wonderful. I definitely have to be there at some
Yeah.
point. That's the worst part about it is the getting there for us is the hard part. And once you're
Yes.
there, I'm sure it's great, but the getting there is the hard part. So
Yeah.
just two final questions for you. One is, and I know that you have some places coming up, but we'll get to that question. So, notwithstanding what you already have planned, where in the world is a place, maybe two, that you've never been, that you're not already going, that you have to go?
Yeah. South America and Antarctica. So I'm planning, hope it comes off next year, planning to go to South America. Have not been there, but also while I'm there, if I can possibly do it, you can actually get access to Antarctica because it's not too far away. So I'm really early stages looking at that. But yeah, they're expensive places to go to, but again, once in a lifetime. For you, I think South America is probably closer also. So we've probably got the similar flip with, Asia and Australia. South America is
For
probably a
sure.
little bit further afield, but closer for you guys in the US. Yeah. Antarctica, I've always wanted to say as well. There's places that not many people go to, and it's just, yeah, it's about seeing something different, and I'm sure it's going to be very different down there. So again, it's the cost
Oh, yeah.
because it is a bit more remote. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's just about how we plan the way while we're down there to do it like hit both at the same time. You can imagine I'll be going on ChatGPT and asking it for advice on how I'm going to make it affordable to go
Sure.
to those places.
Absolutely. If I could
Yeah,
recommend the few places that I've been in South America, I thought for me at least, Medellin in Colombia was one of my favorite places I've ever been in the world. Just very,
yeah,
very impactful in my life. I just thought that and we did a walking tour, which a local guide and the stories of just the things that have happened there and the turnaround that they've had there. So that's definitely on the list. And obviously, as you know, I mean, if you go to South America, you kind of have to go to Machu Picchu.
yes,
It's just unbelievable. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So the last question I have, we're finally at the end here of this episode because again, I'm going to talk to you again, Linda. We're going to have you back at some point. You kind of alluded throughout the episode, maybe early on, you have some places lined up. Where are you going?
So in September, I'm going to London, going back to Ireland. I'm going to Greece and the Greek islands, Iceland, Denmark, and Turkey.
That's amazing. What a trip that's going to be.
Yes, so these are some, well, Turkey sort of obviously near Greece, so we're going to just go there. With Turkey, as an Australian, I don't know whether you know much about the Anzac. We have Anzac Day, and the Australians fought in Gallipoli, so I'm going to Gallipoli. So while in Turkey, I'm also going to Gallipoli on the coast there because that's a big history. But yeah, these places I've never been to, and I'm just so excited to go to. Again, I've spent some time in Scandinavia, being in Stockholm. But yeah, Denmark also, a little story around that. Queen Mary, who is in Denmark, she's actually Australian. You probably know that already. But I'm going to go to the castle that her and her husband and the children live in. So I'm going to go for a tour of that castle as well. So again, the countries you visit have always got some sort of meaning or something, some connection. And so, I always try and pick countries that have got some sort of connection. There's something about the countries that are drawing me there. So, yeah, so that's the trip, and I cannot wait.
I can't wait for you. And so I think that the perfect plan, and we'll talk about this later, but let's connect after that. I would love to hear some stories that you have from those travels because those sound like amazing places. I would also love to go to. So
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
this has been awesome, Linda. Is there anything that you want to add? Is there any? This is something I've asked to some people. Is there anything that just stands out to you as just one final just crazy, ludicrous. Like, I can't believe this even happened to me. Is there any just one crazy story that you can tell us from all of your travels that you've had that was just like, wow, besides being detained in China?
Um, well, One that was quite pivotal also is I got stuck in a hurricane in Miami. So a few years back, um, and obviously didn't do my research well. So I went in the time when when the hurricane season was. So that was my first time in Miami. Yeah, there was a Category 5 hurricane headed for South Beach. Luckily for us, it diverted at the last minute, as hurricanes do. Not that I'm an expert, but yeah, that was an interesting and quite frightening experience, and a bit of an education too. One, it taught me you must check the weather before you go into any place. I met some people there, and I talk about it also in Annex from Abroad, but I actually helped them. So as frightened and worried as I was, I actually helped some people as well. And so I felt like I was doing a good thing as well. So obviously when the hurricane, I was at a hotel that was right on the path of where the hurricane was coming on the beach there. So we had to evacuate the hotel, and then go inland to other hotels. I think we ended up at the Travel Lodge or somewhere like that. But it was phenomenal, like something I've never experienced. So we don't have hurricanes in Australia. We have what we call cyclones. So I suppose they're the equivalent to a hurricane, but we don't get them where I live. They are up, the north coast of Australia, more up in Queensland and up in Northern Territory, normally where they hit, or up in northern Western Australia, but not down in the east, sort of where I'm located. Yeah, it was interesting being at this inland hotel. So they said to us, either you can go to the school, evacuate to a school, or go to an inland hotel. Well, I'd been shopping, obviously, as you do in Miami, and I had so many bags, and I thought to myself, alone, I can't sleep. If I'm in a school hall, then I'm at risk, right? Because I don't know people, and yeah, so I just thought to myself, probably the inland hotel is probably a better situation. I've got a hotel room, I've got a little bit more security. Can I tell you, Bill, that even though we were inland, that hotel shook. The actual foundations of that hotel shook and shook and shook. The rain was torrential. It was scary in itself. I just can't imagine what it would have been like on the coast. That would have been like on another level. And yeah, it was pretty frightening. Obviously, I was at the top level of this travel lodge, and the building shook, and the water was coming in like through the wind. Through it was just, yeah, like I've never seen in my life. Obviously, we're talking to each other now, which is a good thing. So I obviously survived that. But
Right.
gosh, I
You
learnt
know
so
it
much.
worked out. Yeah.
I learnt a lot about how to handle myself, how to be resilient. I helped others, which was great as well. So there was these two French guys, and they didn't speak any English. Luckily for me, I spoke a little bit of French, and they were just so frightened. Like I was scared, but they were on another level. They couldn't speak English, and they didn't know what was going on, and they needed help. So I said to them, "Come with me. Come on. We'll get in the cab together, and I said, we've got to go to this hotel, so let's go together." And they said to me in French, "Thank you, our angel." And I was like, well, that was enough for me. It was like, they said that in French, and I was like, yeah, I was their angel. I'd helped them, and that was a good thing. So in adversity, we helped each other, and
Beautiful.
yeah, so it worked out well.
That's beautiful. What a way to end. What a way to end the episode. That's so awesome and I love stories that show the humanity, and they show like when you can actually touch someone else's life in one way or another, like they'll never forget you. That's
No, never.
that's really awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you'll never forget them either. So I love those
yeah,
connections. So
yeah.
that's
It's
what travel
amazing.
does. And I've talked about it before. Like, vacation is one thing. A vacation is let's go sit on a beach somewhere and just relax and unwind. And travel is something completely different.
Yeah.
I feel like most of what you do is true travel, and that's wonderful. Linda, thank you so much for being an amazing guest. I loved hearing your stories and the experiences that you've had. And again, we didn't touch on probably 90% of what you've actually been through and experienced. So again, I'd love to have you back. I hope this experience was good for you, and just thank you for being here.
Look, thanks, Bill. It's been a pleasure. It's been a really fabulous conversation, and yeah, absolutely up for coming back. Thank you.
Awesome. And good luck in your travels that you have coming up. And I know they're going to be wonderful.
Yep, absolutely.
I told you it was another great episode. Thank you, Linda, the Smart Travelista, for being with us today. And thank you all for listening. Coming up next week, if you like skiing or know somebody who does, what a great episode I have coming up for you. I've got a guy named Rob coming up who really just tells some fantastic stories. It's way beyond skiing. You don't have to know. I know nothing about skiing, and I was just mesmerized by the stories and tales that he has to tell. I also have news. We have merch. Please head to the whybpodcast.com webpage and check out the merch page. Get yours now. Thank you for being here. Have a great day.